Blog Talk Radio.
Hey there! Welcome to Big Blend Radio with your hosts, Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazine.com.
Hello and welcome to Big Blend Radio's First Friday Toast to the Arts and Parks show. We are your hosts, Nancy Reed and Lisa Smith, the crazy mother-daughter travel team on the Love Your Parks tour and publishers of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine, as well as Parks and Travel magazine. Both of them are digital and cool because you can listen to interviews, watch videos, read stories, and you know what? You're going to be able to hear poetry in them too, right, Nancy?
I know. It's fun.
I know. It's very cool. We love our First Friday show because we get to chat with artists and poets, musicians, writers, dancers, anyone in the arts that is an artist in residence with the National Parks Arts Foundation. It's a really awesome organization that works with artists to give them a residency opportunity in a park unit. Places like Dry Tortugas National Park. You can have your own island for a full month. Imagine that.
I still want to go.
I know. I don't think they'll let us in, but
I know.
But really, you actually have to have two people for that one because you really are on a remote island in the Florida Keys. And so there's places like that, Chaco Canyon or Chaco Culture National Historical Park, really ancient and beautiful out in northern New Mexico. There's Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, Haleakala. All these different, just these opportunities are amazing to spend a full month. And one of the opportunities is to be out in Gettysburg National Military Park. And you know what? They have this amazing program for poets, a Poets in Parks program. And this is where the National Parks Arts Foundation is partnered with the Poetry Foundation, the National Park Service, and the Gettysburg Foundation. It's all very cool. You can learn more about it. Go to nationalparksartsfoundation.org. And today we have two poets joining us. We have Xochitl-Julisa Bermejo joining us. You can find her on her website. It's Xochitl-Julisa.wordpress.com, and that is Xochitljulisa. See, I can spell, Nancy.
Very good.
I know. Xochitl was on our show before she went to Gettysburg, and so now we get to chat with her after her experience. So welcome back, Xochitl. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Hey, it's great to have you back. And now you're in L.A., right?
Yes. I'm in the San Gabriel Valley, so a suburb east of downtown L.A.
Okay, cool.
Okay.
So we're not too far from you. Today we are in 29 Palms, California. We're actually airing live from the historic Homestead Inn. It's a bed and breakfast, and it's for sale if anybody wants a really cool artist retreat. This is like a spot for that.
This would be a great spot.
For a writer's retreat, like you have all these different rooms out on the property and gardens and all fountains and awesome sunrises and views of Joshua Tree National Park. So we're not too far from you, Xochitl. But I think we're going to go a little further out. We're going to Tulsa, Oklahoma. And we got to go through Oklahoma for a little brief stint last year on our travels across country. And we're going to chat with Steve Bellin-Oka. How are you doing, Steve?
Good. Thank you very much for having me, Lisa and Nancy.
Hey, this is awesome. So you're in Tulsa, but you've been around quite a bit.
I have. I live in Tulsa, Oklahoma right now, but I grew up in Baltimore, Maryland, so quite close to the Gettysburg National Military Park.
Okay. So this is interesting. So when were you there? What year?
I was there last fall, about mid-September to mid-October.
Okay. And so where did you get to stay? Were you in the Klingel House or a different property in the park?
I was in the Klingel House, which is a wonderfully preserved dwelling right in the middle of the battlefield.
Oh, wow. Okay, so now I know that your first book of poems, Instructions for Seeing a Ghost, is out. It's also won the 2019 Vassar Miller Prize, and so this was published at the University of North Texas Press and just came out. But I do have to ask, did you see a ghost in the Klingel House? So right there.
I looked long and hard, not just in the Klingel House, but in the surrounding areas of the battlefield, and it may have been just my own wanting to see a ghost, but I'm fairly certain I didn't see anything, but I heard some things. And I also smelled some ghostly tobacco smell in the yard of the Klingel house one day when no one was around smoking pipe tobacco.
Ooh, that's a new one. This is a new one.
Yeah.
So, now, when you were over there, did you stay in the Klingel house too?
Yes, I stayed in the Klingel house.
Did anything go bump in the night?
I remember we talked about this, but I was really scared about possibly having some kind of encounter. So for the first week or more, I would leave my Netflix on my TV on my computer, and then my computer was like right by my head, like I was like on my pillow, and I never shut off the lights. But one time, the only thing I think maybe happened was that I was totally asleep, and then I was woken up by like a sudden chill, and I went to grab my blankets, like if a breeze came through, and I put my blanket over me, and then I realized that there were no open windows, and so there was no possibility of a breeze. But that was it.
Cool. Wow, this is very cool. Xochitl, when you were on the show last time, you were on your way to Gettysburg, and I think we had just actually moved back to Tucson, kind of like our midpoint of our tour, and now we're back on it. But you hung out in an area that we love so much, which is Buenos Aires National Wildlife Refuge. It is out in south of Tucson, and have you been watching the news on what's going on and people? I mean, have you been nervous at all about everything that's people getting arrested for helping folks over with water? Have you been seeing any of that?
Oh, yeah, I've definitely been following all the news, and I was out there, I think, in 2011 and then again in, like, 2013 or 2014 for short stints. And then I continue to support No More Deaths is the organization that I was working with, and I continue to support them in different ways. But I've definitely been following the news. I'm happy that I can't remember his name right now, but there was someone who was on trial and was in danger of getting like 20 years, and he was acquitted. So that was really wonderful news.
That was wonderful. Yes.
Yeah. With both of you, and I believe you both had readings scheduled for this month through the Poetry Foundation too. So I'm glad we could do. Yeah. So we get to do readings with you today, which is awesome to have you both read poetry. But this is, there's something that I think which really connects you both is I think with poetry, you have a voice that's, like music and obviously writing and everything, but there's something about dealing with things that people may not always want to see and look at, right? Xochitl, with what you did out in the Refuge area and in southern Tucson and even your first collection of poems, you'll go for it, right? You're not going to kind of draw back on things that people want to close their eyes to. Yeah. Yeah. And then for you, Steve, that's what your current book, I should say, that it just now published, right?
It was published in the middle of February, so right before the pandemic shut basically everything down.
Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you very much.
It's a bummer that the pandemic has cut things short for you, but congratulations. That's huge.
Thank you very much. Yeah, it's been a weird situation because I had a reading tour scheduled for all over the place this past month in April and all through May. And now I'm basically, sitting in my apartment, quarantined, reading poems every once in a while and recording them for YouTube, and that's been my reading tour.
So give us an overview about your book. It's Instructions for Seeing a Ghost, because this connects with loved ones. This is deep.
It does. Oh, yeah, thank you. So the ghost metaphor is kind of both literal and figurative. So you had said earlier that I had lived all over the place, and I have. I lived from 2007 to 2015, the fall of 2015, in Canada because my spouse is a Japanese citizen man, and it was not legal for us to marry and therefore get him a green card in the U.S. until 2015. So the book is a lot about that experience of kind of having to give up my entire life and be lucky enough at least to go live in another country where we could remain together until the laws changed here. And then a little bit about returning. So the ghost metaphor is kind of my immigrant experience in another country of being kind of both there and not there. I mean, there physically, but emotionally back in my home country, the United States, and how that kind of affected my way of seeing the world. And then coming back 8 years later to a country that was, you don't really see your own country until you've been able to kind of see it from a distance. And things were really interesting to kind of try to resettle back in here as both a citizen and a returning kind of exile. But I also had some family members pass away during that time in Canada, quite young, a brother and a sister. And so even the first 2 or 3 years that we were living there, I was coming back to Maryland constantly because my sister had a terminal illness and my brother died unexpectedly. So I was kind of there and not there in both places all the time.
Wow.
Wow.
Well, I do know what you mean about when you live outside of a country and then you return, how your perspectives change. I mean, we lived in Africa for almost 20 years.
Right.
And then coming back to the States was I found it harder to come back to the States than I did find it hard to go to Africa.
That's really interesting because I found it, I was, the whole time we were in Canada, I was dying to come back because the United States is my home. But then, it was difficult coming back. It was a difficult experience because it involved sort of revising my whole view of myself and the country that I was part of.
I wanted to go to you, Xochitl. Tell us about your poetry collection, Posada, Offerings of Witness and Refuge.
The collection is half about my experience out in the Arizona border with No More Deaths, No Más Muertos, and then the other half is about my family's history of immigration. My father's family. My father came as a teenager in the 50s with his parents and his brothers and sisters, and then my mother was brought here as an infant and was undocumented and didn't know until she was a teenager. So just kind of reflecting on that history and then how both things reflect back on me and who I am living here in LA and being a single 30-something. Yeah.
What was it like going from, East LA going to Arizona? I don't know about your other travels, but what was it like going to Gettysburg in that kind of surrounding of a battlefield for you?
I found it similar to being in the Arizona borderlands. I mean, I call myself an experiential poet. I get a lot of inspiration from being in a place, walking is a very big part of my process. So like walking through the park or walking through the desert and just experiencing that, and both felt, different levels, but both felt dangerous. So there was a lot of, just my poetry ended up being a lot about that, like walking in these places, watching what kind of flora and fauna am I seeing. I did a lot of that in Arizona, which I really was happy that I was always journaling and writing notes about what kind of plants I was seeing, and did that also a little bit in Gettysburg. But yeah, just experiential. Is how I write. So they were kind of similar in that way. And then they're both battlefields, really. They're both either past tense or current. They were both war zones. So there was a lot of similarities, actually.
Yeah. Did you ever get the feeling when you're walking out in like the Buenos Aires area that you were being watched?
Yes, plus you would hear helicopters and drones at different parts of the day. So there was always a sense of that I was being watched, and I had a similar sense because I didn't realize before I went to Gettysburg that there was like a Confederacy following there. So then I also still had that sense of like people.
Whoa! Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. I find battlefields are fascinating because it really, it just makes it so real, and it is real. That's the thing of it. I feel like people really do need to go to battlefields sometimes to have that jolt to understand, what
like it really happened.
What war and those kind of times are, So for you, and Stephen, I want to make sure I give your website out too. It's Steve-Bellin, BELLIN-OKA.com. But Steve,
That's
for
correct.
you, you've been out in Civil War battlefields before, right? Being out in Maryland.
Oh yeah. Numerous field trips when I was a kid to Gettysburg, Antietam, and Manassas, and it was really interesting to go back to them with a real sense of focus that I kind of wanted to write poems about being there because the experience as an adult was totally different than as a child.
Okay. Yeah, exactly, right? It's this, that jolt again of really understanding more. So do you do a lot of walking too, or were you in the house? What was it like for you?
I did quite a bit of walking around the battlefield as well. So like Xochitl, I'm kind of an experiential poet where I need to be in the physical setting that I want to write about. But then I was interested in my time there on how also the past impinges on the present and colors the present. So growing up in Maryland and Baltimore was a really interesting experience relating to the Civil War history because it's a state that's on the border, an invisible border between North and South, and was a slave state prior to the Civil War. And growing up, I was never taught the history that many Marylanders went and served in the Confederate Army, just as many who went to serve in the Union Army. It was always colored with, we were on the winning side, we were on the side of moral right. And it turns out to be much more ambiguous than that. And so going back to the battlefield in Gettysburg, I was able, things that were never pointed out to me were monuments to Maryland Confederate soldiers and things like that. And it got me a lot thinking about how the legacy that's been handed down to me in the sense of the state that I was from and the color of my skin was much more complicated than I had been taught as a child, and I found that fascinating. But what I really ended up doing was taking some photographs that were originally taken on the days after the battle and the aftermath by Matthew Brady and Timothy O'Sullivan, and going to those exact same spots on the battlefield and just kind of contemplating the past photograph with the present thing that I was seeing and thinking about that. And that's what I ended up deriving most of my poetry that I wrote that month from.
Okay. Wow.
That's cool.
So now, Xochitl, would you go back and do a residency like this for a month to just have that one full month? And if so, would you want to go to a different park, or would you want to return to Gettysburg?
I would. It was on my bucket list to do a national park residency, but when the Gettysburg one came across my desk, the deadline was like I think that week, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. Like I've always wanted to do a national park, but I didn't realize the differences between like the history parks and the natural parks. So I would love to do a natural park because I love writing about nature. Like I said, when I was in Arizona, I did a lot of note taking on like the kinds of plants I was seeing in the animals. So yeah, I would love to do a natural park one of these days.
Yeah, like Hawaii volcanoes would be cool too.
I would love to do the Hawaii one as well.
Me too.
Everybody wants to go to
Hawaii.
Hawaii.
Have you seen that house? they call it the Art B&B. That house, it's a 6-bedroom house, and it has a recording studio and views of the ocean. And I'm like, I want my.
Go.
Who doesn't want tiki cocktails? Yeah. Okay, like
exactly. Yeah.
the important stuff.
That's what we could do, Lisa. We'll just put ourselves in there as master cocktail artists and innovators, and we'll be there at the beach and make different cocktails.
I'm practiced in the art of cocktailing. It's called mixology.
That's excellent.
Yes. And then I'm even better at drinkology.
Yes, research and development.
Yes, I love this. But I think it's really great to have a residency for poetry. I think that's something we don't see that much of, especially for a full month. Isn't that kind of unique? Yeah, to have that.
Yeah, it really is. It's kind of unusual to get that much uninterrupted time where you don't have to worry about pressures of day-to-day life and you can just focus on your work.
Mm.
I also think it's...
go ahead.
I think it's pretty wonderful that Tanya and the National Parks Arts Foundation did this, because a lot of arts foundations don't take poetry, don't look at poetry the same way as they look at painting or sculpting or these other art forms. So to have an arts foundation that's serving many arts, for them to put this aside just for poets is pretty fantastic.
It's really full circle what they do. And I agree with you, because I paint, and I know there's a whole lot of programs for painters, but I've rarely seen one that would encompass writers and poets, unless that's all they did, in that program. But not that this is a unique program that takes any kind of art form, which I think is really valuable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think so too. I mean, even dancers, and I think when you're writing, because this is something I want to, because I've written poetry and I've written a lot of music, mostly. Like my poetry ends up being lyrics, song lyrics. So it's this interesting, weird thing that all of a sudden here comes a melody, I'm going to take those words away. When you're writing, like let's start with you, Steve, on this. When you write, do you read it out aloud so that and we should do the reading too, so let's get to that. When you're writing, do you write it as though you're reading it, like a songwriter will be doing it as a music thing with the tempo and everything?
I don't really read my own work out loud until I think it's close to being finished as a draft of a poem, and then I obviously read it out loud many times and slowly. But when I'm actually drafting it and working on it in the early stages, I really don't. I don't know why that is. Maybe it's just an internal sense of rhythm that I have that I kind of don't want to be too, conscious of at first.
Oh, yeah. So
it might be overworked.
Yeah. It's kind of this interesting about, do you edit while you write, or do you just let it all go? Sochi, for you, that process, what's it like?
When I'm in a residency, like when I was out at the park, my process was a lot. Like I would do a morning walk, and then, or I would wake up and write down my dreams, because there was a lot of weird dreams out there, because just being in this strange place. So I did a lot of dream journaling, and then I'd take a walk, and then maybe I'd go out and see the archives and go take a look at something, or read a book in the afternoon, and then I would just, like, I kind of think of it as collaging. Like, I need to have all these experiences, and then I dump everything, like, into a journal. And so then I do a lot of journal writing after I've done all those things. And then from there, I pick and choose, I see there's maybe a little poem in this piece of my journal writing, and then the poem comes from all of that. But I have to have all the different experiences of the day, dump it all into a journal, and then I can write the poem.
Wow. Do you find it different to be alone? I mean, is it kind of like, just like you're alone for a month, kind of?
Right.
And, I mean, that would freak some people out.
It was scary. I mean, it's like, there's two soldiers died in the basement. And if you look it up, and there's a little folder there where it's like things to know, right? Where it's like, like an Airbnb, but there's like a couple pages on like, you may hear this, or that might happen. I'm like, It was scary,
We should be doing these Gettysburg
had
interviews at Halloween.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That'd be fun.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to get all of the things together in one show.
Yeah.
So you'd like here's Gettysburg on Halloween, and everybody just has a little thing, to add.
It's the Gettysburg Ghost Out.
Yeah.
It's supposed to be the most haunted place in America.
See?
Wow.
Okay.
I did have.
Go ahead.
I had two friends I had three different friends from the East Coast. One friend drove me out there, and then she decided to stay with me a couple nights because she was like, I'm not leaving you here. I was like, okay. And then another weekend, a friend came from New York, and she was like, oh, I want to do a ghost tour. And after one night in the house, she was like, never mind, I don't need a ghost tour. So I had a couple of visitors.
That's funny.
Oh, wow. What about you, Steve? Did you have any visitors?
I did. Since I grew up in the area, Baltimore's only about an hour away. So I asked people not to bother me during the week while I was writing, but on the weekends I had friends come and stay for the weekend, and one of the weekends I went down to Baltimore to see some people. So it was a good alone time, but it was broken up with socialization too.
Mm. Okay, so let's get down to some readings. Xochitl, what are you going to read for us? And is it something you wrote in Gettysburg, or is it from Posada?
I was going to read a couple of poems that I wrote out in Gettysburg.
Okay. Well, let's start with one from you, and then we'll go for one for Steve, and then we'll close out with one more from each of you. So there it is. You've got the floor, even though we can't see it.
Thank you. So I was living in the house. I'd never been to a Civil War site. Something I wanted to say earlier is that I live in LA, the West Coast. So it was a total culture shock for me to be on the East Coast and then to be at a Civil War site. These are things like people getting dressed up and doing these. What are they called? Reenactments.
Reenactments.
These are things we don't see. I don't see out in LA. I didn't grow up with that. So it was just a huge culture shock in many ways. Okay, so this poem is called Living with the Dead, and it's after the 11th Massachusetts Infantry Monument, which is, you walk out the house and you go to the right, and there's this monument, this big monument, which has a hand coming out of a pillar, and the hand is holding a saber. And so this is one of the monuments I would pass, daily. And then you also, from the bedroom window, you look out and you can see, cannons right below the window like a row of cannons. So these are the things you kind of see just, sitting there. So Living with the Dead, after the 11th Massachusetts Infantry Monument. A ghost yanks at my feet, dragging me from navy sheets and onto the floor. I fumble for the phone, my hand asleep. I'm pregnant, I say. The baby is yours. Tingling fingers speak to what's real and not. It's pitch black, and yet I feel the line of teal cannons below my second-story window watching. In the living room, a battle flag set in a field of white, hate on display, taunts. I never turn out the lights. Fields are so dark, I doubt the day. At dawn, I rush out barefoot to thank the sun and name the fog. Down the lane, a single hand rises from concrete, clutching a saber. The hand thrusts up like Night of the Living Dead. Well, all ends, that is well, the hand thinks. But thoughts choke on stone and stumble. The hand hacks before trying again. Well ends well, that's all. And again, well, all that ends. No, the thought is simply all ends. Finished. That's my point.
Right on. Wow.
Awesome.
That's deep.
Yeah.
That is really deep.
I can see that. I can see the hand with the saber.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The hand.
Yeah. Sometimes when you look back at things like that, maybe there could have been a better choice.
Yeah.
For the monument?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then that,
I mean, one of the things that was really interesting about being there, I was there in 2017, which was right in the summer, that whole summer was all about monuments and taking them down and protest. And then I get there not really realizing what an East Coast Civil War park is like. I get there and it has over 1,000 monuments. And I was like, oh my gosh. So it's like you walk 10 feet, there's something in front of you, and they all have these different images, and so it's a really interesting experience.
Wow. So Steve, do you have a poem from Gettysburg?
Sure. Don't you remember that at the back window of the Klingel House, you can see the Trossel Farm, which was the property behind it. And there's a really famous photograph taken by Timothy O'Sullivan on the 6th of July, 1863, which is only like 3 days after the end of the battle. And you can see in the photograph a lot of shell damage to the barn and a lot of corpses of horses in the foreground of the photo. I wish I could show it right now in comparison with the poem. But I always found that photograph to be really striking because it never occurred to me until thinking about it that in the course of a battle in the Civil War, they would try to shoot the horses first so that they could not be charged and the horses couldn't drag the cannon. So I took that photograph with me and went and sat in approximately the same place that the photo was taken. And the poem's called Photograph of the Trossel Barn by Timothy O'Sullivan, July 6, 1863. A door falls out of the frame. Our song seems to slide off shingles, cloud reaching for its own embrace. What shall be rigid but wood fence, horses that fan behind me like the tail of some strange giant bird, bathed in wispy light and framed against the ground, ribs pedaling closed around a breath, red thread wrapped in a bullet slash brightening their throats. After the rain, everything is browned, down to one infinite shade. The crops burnt, the charred stalks will thresh again. Whatever we can hold between forefinger and thumb, then vanishing. Whatever it was we had been, who tried to go back among the living with the smell of drifting like the sound of a mother weeping. Weeping again. The hours trapezing over the ridge of anonymous trees, equine faces grinning forever. What happened before this is still a mystery to me. Here in my wood-like legs and my green hands, I see all the angles of what went wrong. We're getting older, and when no one's watching, we climb right into it. The force that nestles the peach tree will divest and undo us. A door falls out of the frame. In memory, we hit rewind, watch them rise again. And that's the end of the poem.
Yeah.
Wow. Makes you really think.
Yeah, just even those details, those, it's like every detail like holds a sense of time, right?
I'm glad you speak about the horses because
they're forgotten.
They're always forgotten, and left out, and I can promise you it wasn't their choice,
Yeah.
No.
No,
and they obviously later they buried the human corpses first, and the horses were left to the very end to be buried. And I don't know if you know this, but it rained really, really heavily the day after the battle ended, so there was quite a bit of rot. And and that's in the photo. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
I really love that your process of taking these photos from that time and then looking at the current view and processing that. It's really cool.
Yeah, because thank you. I'm interested in historical memory and how scars on the landscape are never really gone. But especially with a photograph, when you can go to the exact same spot where it was taken 170, however many years ago that was. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
I know.
Did you find those photos in the archives?
That
was a really cool highlight.
Yeah, they're all
getting to see the archives.
Really Yeah, they do have great archives there. And I did use a little bit of those with letters from soldiers that they keep there. But really, I got wrapped up on the Library of Congress's website. There's really, really high resolution scans of photographs that were taken immediately after the battle.
Wow.
That's incredible.
So I downloaded them
That's
from
really
there.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow. One of the artists, Nick Collier, is a photographer, and his residency in Gettysburg, and he served in the military, he put himself in the positions of the soldiers in this one field.
Oh, interesting.
And he took himself and put himself in current gear of where all the soldiers lay in a battle.
Oh, wow.
I know.
That's really interesting. Yeah.
I'm going to send it, you guys, everyone. It's on our site, nationalparktraveling.com. Just Google search him on our site, and I'll send you the links so you guys can see this. But he recreated those photos, and I just thought
that's wonderful.
That was absolutely mind blowing what he did. So I think it's very, very cool.
You know, Lisa, it just occurs to me one of the best ways to show the artist's work is to put as much of what we can into a video.
I know. It'd be really cool.
Wouldn't that be awesome?
It'd be very cool
to talk to Tanya and see
how to put that process together.
Yeah.
You know, it's. Do you see when you do poetry from something like a residency? So when you have all these poems, do you put them into a collection, into a book, or do you use them mostly for being published in poetic journals or poetry magazines, or mostly for readings? What happens with your poetry?
Yeah, both. So what I did with I did publish about 6 of these poems that I wrote at Gettysburg in a little pamphlet called Out of the Frame that was published by Wall Savide Press in November of last year. So that was one thing I intended to do with it. But I am working on a current second manuscript of poetry, and that's a really kind of nebulous process. The poems kind of come together and tell you which ones belong in the manuscript and which ones don't. So I'm not entirely sure about that, but I'm sure some of these poems will find their way in. And I also read them at readings and things like that.
What about you, Xochitl? What's going to happen with your poems from Gettysburg?
I ended up publishing them in a chapbook called Locating the Dead. I had created a chapbook out of them, and I was sending them out for a while and not getting that many responses. And then just this past winter, I got it published in this really cool collaboration with a gallery called AD Projects in downtown LA. They were doing this thing where they were inviting sculptors to sculpt and build a bookshelf inspired by the poetry that was submitted to them. So
what a nice idea.
Artist Stanton Hunter created a shelf, and it's really cool. It's got this it's got this green field at the top and peach pits, because I wrote a lot about the peach orchard, and trees, and then there's a space for my little chapbook. So that was really cool.
Very cool.
Nice.
And talking about how to get poetry published, it's so difficult. I mean, it's like sometimes I think things like the Poetry Foundation and obviously National Park Arts Foundation. We've got to give a shout out to Gettysburg Foundation and also to the National Park Service. Everybody coming together to make this work, but it is difficult. It's like an artist in galleries having to deal with. How do you get it out there? And so
it's difficult.
Yeah, that's quite a road. But that brings me, Xochitl, to your organization, Women Who Submit, and it's not in that way. I refuse to submit.
It's not in the way you think. Yes, we are reclaiming the word submission, and it's about it's action. It's an action organization that is working for gender parity in publishing. And we've been an organization since 2011. It was founded by Ashaki M. Jackson, Alice Dixon, and myself with the Submission Party. And that was the idea of Alice Dixon. And that was basically this idea that, women, because of the organization VITA, Women in Literary Arts, back in 2009, they started counting how many women were being published in top-tier journals, like The Atlantic or The New Yorker.
Yeah.
And they found that there was a dearth in the women being published. And so editors were saying the reason that was because women weren't submitting as often. So our organization was founded around this idea, okay, well, let's help women submit more often then. And we'll hang out and have a little party, and we'll share food, and we'll share journals, and we'll share resources. And when you submit, we'll clap for you. And that's what happened. And so, yeah, it's been going on since 2011, and now we have free programming. We have
that's really
career
wonderful.
development.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, wasn't there something like I'm thinking back, in high school, then for me that's a while ago. Wasn't there something about women writers and poets who always submitted their work under male names, just for that reason, because they already knew? Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a long history of that.
Yeah.
There's a long history. I have a friend who has been running an experiment, a female poet, for a couple of years now, where she submits the same poem under her own name and under a fake man's name, and comparing how often it gets accepted under the man's name as opposed to her own, and it is definitely more often.
No way! Wow!
Yeah.
I want to give the website out. It's womenwhosubmitlit.org. So womenwhosubmitlit.org. Check out the website and get involved there. That is amazing.
And this is for.
Go ahead.
Sorry, and this is for women and non-binary writers. It started out with just being focused on women, but in the last few years, we're now women and non-binary writers. We're supporting both.
That's fantastic.
Very.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That's amazing. So the readings that you had scheduled in May, are they going to be postponed and moved to the fall, or do you know Steve and Xochitl? Because I know you were together for that.
Yeah, I was looking forward to meeting you in person, Xochitl. But from what Tanya has told us, they're going to try to reschedule for either the fall or the spring of next year.
Okay. Well, as soon as everybody knows, we'll make sure everybody knows from our side and for our readers and listeners as well, because definitely, and we're really lucky to have you both on the show here today to do some reading. So we know that there's more to look forward to as well. So Steve, can you read one of your poems from Instructions for Seeing a Ghost?
Sure, I'd be glad to. So this is the opening poem in the book. It's kind of about, I'm obsessed with history and its effect on the present. So this is about a family myth, and the title is ironic. It's called Self-Portrait as the Chosen One. Long before I was what I am now, short of breath, bald, just returned with arthritic knees from exile in another country's muck and red volcanic soil, too nearsighted to discern the high plains tumbleweed from the burning bush of myth, scorched now and silent. Long before this, I was the first son my mother bore who lived. The first two were named, baptized as they strangled blue and cold in the stillborn canal. Incorruptible halo of hospital lights. But not me. I got dragged through by the forceps in time to cut the cord, unwind the noose of flesh from my pulsing neck. I can't be sure when she first told me this story, this incantation, why they adopted my brother before I was born. Maybe I was 5 or 6, but I heard it so many times it swelled below my skin, a cyst adherent to bone. We were walking on an unweeded path at the edge of some woods a few blocks from the house, the trees raised later for condos, a strip mall. You're a miracle, she said. You'll do great things. But I haven't. I remember the September grass wilting, the dead leaves, veins crunching underfoot. From that day I've been lost, wandering through a field of flawed memories and missed signposts. What she should have said is, you will learn even your skin is a borrowed mask. that's the end.
Wow. What a last line. Oh, my gosh.
Thank you.
Does that mean I can get new skin?
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. No, I love that.
That was awesome.
I love the details, but how the movement keeps going. But it's like how you do have those moments in time where you remember these. It's the little things you remember, the certain smells that sense memory. That's
right.
amazing. You've got a real talent for that. Wow, very cool.
Thank you.
And everyone, again, that is out now in Steve's new book, Instructions for Seeing a Ghost. How do people get the book? Is it on Amazon, or do they go through the University of North Texas Press?
They can do it from the University of North Texas Press's website or from queerbooks.com. It's available there, too. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but I encourage you not to buy it from Amazon.
I understand. I'm with you.
And have it ordered in at your local bookstore.
Yeah. And here's the deal. Try and get it into your local bookstores. And the more we support our local and independent, and the independents, all hail the independent press, anything that's independent. We got to support it as much as we possibly can. Absolutely. Xochitl, what are you going to be reading next?
Because you asked, I can read a book. I can read a poem from my book.
Okay, wonderful.
So I was going to read something from Gettysburg, but now I was inspired to share something from the collection.
Yes.
Awesome. Yeah, from Posada. So this will be from Posada, Offerings of Witness and Refuge. And how do people get the book?
Through Sundress Publications. That's where it's published. Yeah. And this piece was written as like a survivor guide for people to volunteer with No More Deaths. And when you volunteer with them, you get a couple of days of training where you learn about your rights, and you learn about how medical care for people, and you learn about the desert and what to expect. And so this poem was inspired by those trainings. Things to know for compañeros, a No More Deaths volunteer guide. Did you know a baby rattlesnake's venom is more lethal because it knows no control? Woolly mammoth tarantulas inch across the road at dusk, not down it. Why did the tarantula cross the road? To eat the chicken. Did you know everything in the desert is as alert as a needle and just as sharp? It is possible to comically sit on a cactus, though you probably won't laugh. Crimson scratches and emerald bruises will be your medal. Did you know when patrolling trails you may encounter a mountain lion? If so, gather together, stand tall, and wave your arms. When encountering lightning, spread out and crouch close to the ground. Do not confuse the two. Did you know tu español puede ayudar a salvar una vida? Compañero is Spanish for we are in this shit together. Do not be afraid to speak Spanish. Did you know when you don't have a mirror, you can't care what you look like? When you can't remember what a shower feels like, dirt and sweat cake your clothes, and you want to forget everything sticking to your soul, you won't be too shy to skinny dip. Did you know when barrel cacti become tombstones and their yellow starburst blooms offerings for the dead, you won't be too cool to belt out Katy Perry songs? Did you know orange poppies grow on slopes, oak trees in creeks, and washes are not thick cement slabs? A mile in the city is nothing like a mile in the desert, and as the crow flies is an optical illusion to hikers relying on handheld, pixelated GPS. Did you know there will be a moment when you fantasize crashing water gallons down on the rocks, throwing off your pack, collapsing on the trail, and quitting? This is when you are to stop and rest. There are people in the desert who are never allowed rest. Did you know 1 gallon of water weighs 8.35 pounds? To stay hydrated, a person should drink 1 to 2 gallons a day. Migrants carry a single oil-black gallon in calloused hands for a 3 or more day trip. Why is it black? So as not to glow. Did you know migrants are hurried over trails at night and without light? Their blisters are caused by continuous friction, muscle cramping by dehydration, vomiting by drinking bacteria-ridden cow pond water, and those who move too slow are left behind. Did you know to say, I could care less, is to say it is possible to care more. The careless weed is called bledo in Spanish. In Guatemala, bledo is boiled, drained, and chopped with onions, tomatoes, and cilantro. It grows wild in the desert, and if necessary, can be eaten raw. Did you know I learned about bledo from a Guatemalteca named Nancy? She could share more lessons with you than I ever could. Nancy has crossed twice, and when she talks about her daughter Fatima, she cries. Did you know compañero is Spanish for willing to ask, willing to listen, willing to know? The end of the poem.
Wow. Very cool. And it's exactly right. It's exactly what it is. You're right. 100%. I love that. I love that. And Nancy got to be in there, too.
Yeah, I'd like to point out that I am not that heroine in that poem.
Yeah. This really goes to, like, how you write it, because there's so much rhythm to it, That's the movement. And it feels like that because when you're out there, you're either, really hot and needing shade, or you're on that moving rhythm, That's amazing. It's amazing. Because to me, I always go try to do the music side, but yet at the same time, you have to have that rhythm. So it is like a melody in a way with what you're writing. It's interesting. It's very good stuff, you guys. I'm so glad you could both join us on the show and to do a reading of your work. And now, before you go, I want to know if you could go back to Gettysburg with anybody, have that famous peach pie. I know that recipe is in the Klingel house, right? Have that famous peach pie, go for a walk. Who would you want to go with for a walk in Gettysburg? It could be a poet, it could be anyone. Who would it be? Let's start with you, Steve. And peach pie.
I guess it would be Walt Whitman, since he wrote about the Civil War quite a bit and was a nurse in the Civil War. So plus he'd be fascinating to talk to, and plus another forerunner queer poet that I would love to have met.
I want to go too. Yeah, because you know what? He's got. You guys have that similar style of the little details. Being able to put it into a bigger thing. It's the little details and merging the two together. Yeah,
he was much better at building that into something really important than I was. So I take.
Well, and Xochitl, Xochitl, you're the same with that being able to have those little details, and it's all those things that's why we need poetry to remind us of those and have the compassion. That's what's interesting with yours is you put the compassion and the brutal stuff all like side by side. It's like, check this out. This is how it is. So, yeah. Xochitl, who are you taking?
It's got to be Lincoln.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, when I applied, my proposal was a lot about the Gettysburg Address and Lincoln and his words being inspiring, and then when I got, that's what I knew before going. That's what I knew most about Gettysburg was the Gettysburg Address, and then I got there and it's like very secondary to the 3 days of battle. So I was like, oh, this is
that's really funny because my proposal was a lot about the Gettysburg Address as well, which is, I read as a prose poem, but there was a lot more to do when I got there too, that I didn't write that poem.
Yeah, that's interesting, yeah.
I read that Abraham Lincoln, known as Honest Abe, lied about going to law school. He never went to law school.
Naughty boy.
How about that?
Wow.
Yeah, I know.
He taught himself, yeah.
That's right, he did. He taught himself.
So he started the lawyer joke.
In his mind, it wasn't a lie. He did go to law school, just his own.
Yeah. No, but I think that's interesting about, how things change up when, we talk a lot with visual artists, and they have a concept of what they're going to do, whether it's photography, art, or installation art, we've talked to so many musicians, and when they get there, and that I think that's what's also very cool about the National Parks Arts Foundation and what Tanya has set up is that it's very open. It's allowing the artist to be the artist, whether it's a poet or a writer or a painter. You're allowed to change and let the creative cycle go where it needs to go, and not like, no, you need to write about Lincoln. If you don't write about Lincoln, we're kicking you out of the Kringle House. You know what I mean? That letting that creative process go where it needs to go, and so that the outcome is what it's supposed to be. Because it is a journey when you start going. You don't know until it starts happening.
Right. And that's why programs like that are so important, because they allow you to change direction and do something that might have ended up being much better than what you had originally planned.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Everyone, again, the website is nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Dry Tortugas, I'm not sure if the deadline might be up, but the best thing to do is to sign up, get their newsletter, follow NPAF on social media. They get opportunities, and a lot of times, this works by grants, and the opportunity comes, and if, there's that deadline, and so you need to be on it, because a lot of times it's like, apply now, submit now. Here we are, we're submitting again. Do it now, and if you don't get in the first time, try again, because it is all about who applied where and what and how. And don't take it personally. Just keep going and keep doing it. Some of the most amazing artists have been turned down, and it's just because something else. It just is, and it goes through a juried process. So just keep doing it, right? Just keep applying. Don't give up. So everyone, again, nationalparksartsfoundation.org. Xochitl's website is Xochitl-Julisa.wordpress.com, and that's XOCHITLJULISA.wordpress.com. Is that right, Xochitl? Did I get it right?
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, yeah, and also womenwhosubmitlit.org. Check that out, ladies. And also for Steve's website, it's steve-bellin-oka.com. All right, so thank you both for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much
been
for
lovely.
having me.
Thanks. You guys take care.
Yeah, take care, guys.
And, keep us posted on the readings so we can make sure we post it as well. And everyone, don't forget, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. We'll be back on Sunday with one of our favorite bands, the Walkabouts. They're based in Sydney and Sydney, Australia, and up in New York. And they've got their new album out called 2020. And we always have a good time with them. We'll be popping champagne with them. So that is this Sunday. But here we are. We're going to close with a song called Colors of the USA by Doreen Taylor. You can keep up with her at DoreenTaylorMusic.com.
Every day is something new. Colors